The oldest boy didn't cry when his mother's body hit the ground. He just grabbed his baby sister and stood there, shielding her eyes, like he'd done it before, like he knew exactly what to do when the world fell apart. Josiah Crane had seen men die in the war. He'd buried his wife and son with his own 2 hands. But watching a 7-year-old boy become a man in the space of a heartbeat, that broke something in him he thought was already broken. Welcome to a story of desperate courage and impossible love. If this story moves you, please like and subscribe. Comment your city below so I can see how far Hannah and Josiah's journey travels. Now, let's begin where everything changed, on a summer day too hot for mercy, too desperate for pride. Josiah Crane saw them coming from a quarter-mile out. 4 small figures and 1 taller one, moving slow through the heat shimmer rising off the Wyoming road. He pulled his horse to a stop and squinted against the afternoon sun, watching them weave and stumble like drunk men leaving a saloon. "Trouble," he muttered to himself. His mare, a gray roan named Shadow, snorted in agreement. Josiah had ridden into town for supplies, flour, coffee, salt, same as he did every Tuesday. Same as he'd done for 10 years, ever since he'd buried Martha and their stillborn son in the plot behind the house and decided that silence was safer than hoping. He wasn't looking for trouble, wasn't looking for anything except the road home and another evening sitting alone on his porch, watching the sun go down over land that should have been full of children's laughter, but wasn't. The figures kept coming, closer now, close enough that he could see they were children. 4 of them, clustered around a woman who walked like every step cost her something she couldn't afford to pay. "Not my concern," Josiah said. But Shadow had already slowed, and his hands weren't pulling the reins toward home. The woman stumbled, caught herself, stumbled again. The oldest child, a boy, maybe 7, grabbed her arm and tried to steady her. She shook her head, said something Josiah couldn't hear, and kept walking. Pride. He recognized it. The kind of pride that would rather die than ask for help. "Damn fool woman," he muttered. "Damn fool me." He nudged Shadow forward. They didn't see him coming until he was almost on top of them. The woman's head snapped up, and Josiah saw her face for the first time. Young, maybe 25, with dark hair plastered to her forehead with sweat, and eyes the color of river stones. Pretty, even half dead from heat and exhaustion. But it was the fear in those eyes that stopped him cold. Not fear of the sun or the road or the miles ahead. Fear of him. Fear of a stranger on horseback, a man she didn't know and had no reason to trust. She pulled her children behind her in one swift motion, all 4 of them, ranging from the boy who looked 7 down to a baby girl who couldn't have been more than 2, clutched in the arms of a girl maybe 5 years old. "Stay back," the woman said. Her voice cracked on the words. Josiah raised both hands, showing them empty. "Ma'am, I ain't here to hurt you. You look like you could use some help." "We don't need help." "With respect, ma'am, you're about to fall down in the middle of the road, and them children of yours look like they ain't had water in a day or more." The oldest boy stepped forward, putting himself between Josiah and his mother. His small hands were balled into fists, his jaw set in a way that made Josiah's chest ache. "Mama said we don't need help," the boy said, "so you just ride on, mister." Josiah looked at the boy, really looked at him. Sunburned face, cracked lips, clothes that had been patched and repatched until there was more thread than original fabric. But his eyes were steady, fierce. The eyes of someone who'd been protecting his family for longer than any child should have to. "What's your name, son?" "I ain't your son." "No, you ain't, but I'm asking anyway." The boy hesitated, glanced back at his mother, who gave a small, exhausted nod. Ezra, the boy said. Ezra Dawson. Well, Ezra Dawson, my name's Josiah Crane. I got a ranch about 8 miles west of here. Got a well with cold water, a kitchen with food, and a spare room that ain't been used in a long time. He looked past the boy to the woman. I ain't asking for nothing in return, just offering a place to rest. The woman, Mrs. Dawson, he figured, shook her head. We can't. We have to keep moving. Keep moving where? She didn't answer. Ma'am, the next town's 30 miles. You ain't gonna make it. Not in this heat. Not with 4 children and no water. We'll manage. No, you won't. Something flickered in her eyes. Anger, maybe. Or the last spark of fight, leaving a body that had nothing left to give. You don't know what's following us, she said quietly. You don't know what kind of trouble we bring. Don't much care. You should. Josiah swung down from shadow and took a step toward her, moving slow, the way you'd approach a spooked horse. Ma'am, I've had enough trouble in my life to last 3 lifetimes. Whatever's chasing you, it ain't gonna scare me more than what I've already survived. Now you can stand here arguing until you collapse, and them children watch their mama die in the road. Or you can let me help. Your choice. The woman stared at him. Josiah watched the war play out across her face. Pride against desperation. Fear against exhaustion. The need to protect her children against the impossibility of doing it alone. The baby started to cry. A thin, weak sound that cut through the summer heat like a knife. The woman's shoulders dropped. One night, she said. Just one night to rest, and then we'll be gone. Yes, ma'am, whatever you say. He reached for his canteen, and she flinched. Josiah stopped, held it up so she could see what it was, then held it out to her. Water first, then we'll figure out the rest. She took the canteen with shaking hands and knelt down to give the baby the first drink. The other children crowded close, watching with hungry eyes as their mother carefully rationed the water between them. She gave herself none. Josiah noticed. He didn't say anything, just filed it away in the growing list of things he was learning about this woman. That she'd die before she let her children suffer. That she'd walk until her feet bled rather than ask for charity. That whatever was chasing her was bad enough that she'd rather face the desert than face it. The oldest boy, Ezra, was the last to drink. He took 3 small swallows, then handed the canteen back to Josiah. Thank you, he said. The words sounded like they hurt coming out. Thank you, Mr. Crane. Just Josiah, son. I ain't. I know. You ain't my son. Josiah's mouth twitched, almost a smile. But you're welcome anyway. Getting them all on shadow was a puzzle Josiah hadn't expected to solve. But desperation made for creativity. He ended up walking, leading the mare, while Mrs. Dawson sat in the saddle holding the baby, the 5-year-old girl clutched behind her. Ezra walked beside Josiah, refusing any suggestion that he ride, and a boy of about 4 held his brother's hand with silent determination. The last child, a girl of maybe 3, had fallen asleep on her feet. Josiah had picked her up without asking permission, and she'd curled into his shoulder like it was the most natural thing in the world, her small body burning with heat and exhaustion. They didn't talk much during the walk. The sun was brutal, and everyone was saving their strength. But Josiah learned names anyway, in bits and pieces. The baby was Ruth. The 5-year-old holding her was Miriam. The 4-year-old boy was Samuel. And the sleeping girl in Josiah's arms was Lily. Biblical names, all of them. A religious family then, or at least a mother who believed in something beyond the harshness of frontier life. Your husband, Josiah said after a mile of silence. He pass on? Mrs. Dawson's back stiffened. Yes. Recent? 8 months ago. Mining accident in Colorado. I'm sorry. Are you? The question was sharp, bitter. Josiah glanced up at her, saw the hard set of her jaw, the way her arms tightened around baby Ruth. Yes, ma'am, I am. I know something about losing the person you built your life around. She turned to look at him then, really look, and something in her expression shifted. You lost someone. Wife and son. 10 years ago. She died in childbirth. Baby didn't make it either. I'm sorry. Are you? The words were an echo of hers, and he saw the moment she recognized it. Her mouth opened, then closed. Something that might have been a laugh, or might have been a sob, escaped her throat. I suppose we both know then, she said quietly. What it's like to keep walking when you don't see the point anymore. Suppose we do. They walked in silence after that. But it was a different kind of silence. Not the emptiness of strangers, but the understanding of two people who'd looked into the same darkness and somehow kept breathing. The ranch came into view just as the sun started its descent toward the mountains. 800 acres of grassland, a solid house built to last, a barn that needed painting, and a corral where 3 horses watched the approaching procession with lazy curiosity. Ezra stopped walking. This is yours? He asked, his voice awed. All of this? All of it. Been in my family for 2 generations. My father built that house with his own hands. It's big. It's empty, mostly. Just me and a couple of hands who got their own bunkhouse out back. House ain't seen a family in 10 years. He didn't say it felt like a tomb sometimes. Didn't mention the rooms he kept closed. The nursery he'd built that never held a baby. The rocking chair Martha had loved that still sat by the window, gathering dust. Mrs. Dawson slid down from the saddle, still holding Ruth, and Josiah saw her legs nearly buckle before she caught herself. Miriam scrambled down after her, reaching for Samuel's hand. Let's get you inside, Josiah said. Tom, one of my hands, his wife used to cook for me before she passed. Kitchen's got everything you need. There's beds in the back room. Ain't been slept in, but they're clean. Mr. Crane. Josiah. Josiah. She said his name carefully, like she was testing the weight of it. I need you to understand something. The trouble following us, it's real. It's dangerous. And if you help us, it might come to your door. What kind of trouble? She hesitated, glanced at Ezra, who was watching her with those 2 old eyes. There's a man, she said finally, back in Kansas. His name is Victor Marsden. He owns property, businesses, most of the law in 3 counties. I worked in one of his boarding houses after William died. I thought it would be safe, respectable work for a widow with children. Her voice had gone flat, the voice of someone telling a story they'd told themselves 100 times, trying to make sense of something senseless. He took an interest in me. I said no. He didn't accept that. She swallowed hard. He said I owed him money, wages I'd never borrowed, supplies I'd never taken. Said if I didn't comply, he'd have me arrested for theft. Take my children and put them in an orphanage. Josiah felt something cold settle in his chest. He'd heard stories like this before, knew the kind of men who used power like a weapon, who built systems to trap women with no choices. So you ran. 3 weeks ago. We've been walking, hiding, trying to get far enough that he can't find us. But he has men looking. He has money. He has everything, Josiah finished. Except you. She looked at him, and for a moment the mask slipped. He saw the terror underneath, the exhaustion, the desperate hope she was trying not to feel. "Accept me," she whispered. The baby started crying again. Mrs. Dawson bounced her gently, automatically, the motion of a mother who'd soothed 1,000 tears and expected to soothe 1,000 more. Josiah made his decision. "What's your name, ma'am? Your first name?" "Hannah." "All right, Hannah. Here's what's going to happen. You and your children are going to stay here, not one night, as long as you need. I'm looking for a cook anyway. My last one quit 3 weeks back. Room and board in exchange for work. That's a legitimate job, not charity. Anyone asks, that's what you tell them." "But Marsden can come to Wyoming if he wants. And if he does, he'll find out that the laws in Colorado don't mean a damn thing here, and that the men on this ranch don't take kindly to people threatening women and children." Hannah stared at him. "Why? Why would you do this for us? You don't even know me." Josiah looked at her, this woman who'd walked through hell with 4 children hanging onto her skirts, who'd kept them alive through sheer stubbornness and faith, who'd rather die in the desert than surrender to a monster. "Because it's right," he said, "and because I've spent 10 years with nothing to protect. Feels like maybe it's time that changed." Tom Reeves was waiting on the porch when they arrived, his weathered face creased with surprise at the sight of Josiah walking alongside a loaded horse. "Boss," he said, straightening, "what have you got there?" "New cook and her family. They'll be staying in the back room until further notice." Tom's eyebrows climbed toward his hairline. He looked at Hannah, at the 4 children, at the sleeping girl still curled against Josiah's shoulder. "That's so. That's so. And Tom, there might be trouble coming. Man from Kansas named Victor Marsden. If anyone comes asking questions about a woman matching Hannah's description, you ain't seen nothing. Understand?" Tom was quiet for a moment. Then he nodded, his expression settling into something hard and certain. "Understood, boss. I'll let Gus and Daniel know." "Appreciate it." Tom stepped aside, and Josiah led Hannah and her children into the house. It was cool inside, dim after the brutal sun, and he heard Miriam gasp softly at the size of the main room. "It's like a palace," she whispered. "It's just a house," Josiah said. But he saw it through her eyes for a moment. The stone fireplace, the solid furniture, the kitchen with its big iron stove, and realized that to children who'd been sleeping in barns and abandoned shacks, it probably did look like a palace. Hannah set Ruth down in a chair and turned in a slow circle, taking it all in. "It's beautiful." "It's empty," Josiah said. "Has been for a long time. But the roof don't leak, and the stove works, and there's food in the pantry. We don't need charity, Mr. Josiah. Just work. Let me work, and I'll earn our keep." "Never said otherwise." Their eyes met and held. Something passed between them. Understanding, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Ezra had been standing by the window, watching the ranch hands move through their evening chores. Now he turned, his young face set with determination. "I can work too," he said. "I'm strong. I can help with the horses, or the cattle, or whatever needs doing. I ain't useless." "Never thought you were, son." "I ain't—" "I know." Josiah almost smiled. "You ain't my son, but you're welcome to work anyway. We'll figure out something that suits you." The boy's shoulders relaxed just a fraction. For the first time, he looked like what he was. A 7-year-old who'd been carrying too much for too long, and finally had permission to set some of it down. "Thank you," Hannah said softly. "Thank you, Josiah." "Don't thank me yet. You ain't tasted my cooking. You'll earn every bit of your keep just by saving me from my own kitchen." This time Hannah did smile. It was small, fleeting, exhausted, but real. "I can cook," she said. "I can definitely cook." That night, After the children had been fed and bathed and put to bed in the spare room, all four of them piled into one bed like puppies, unwilling to be separated. Josiah sat on his porch and watched the stars come out. He'd lived in this house for 10 years. 10 years of silence. 10 years of routine. 10 years of telling himself that he was fine, that he didn't need anyone, that the emptiness was just something you got used to. Now there were voices inside. A baby crying, children whispering, a woman singing softly as she put her family to sleep. It should have felt wrong, like an intrusion on his grief. Instead, it felt like the first breath after being underwater for too long. "Damn fool," he muttered to himself. But he didn't mean it. The door opened behind him, and Hannah stepped out onto the porch. She'd washed up, changed into a clean dress he'd found in a trunk of Martha's things that he'd never been able to throw away. The dress was too big for her, but she'd belted it with a strip of cloth and somehow made it look almost elegant. "Children are asleep," she said. "All of them. First time in 3 weeks they've slept without crying." "That's good." "It's because of you. Because they feel safe." "They are safe, long as they're under this roof." Hannah sat down in the chair beside him, the chair that had been empty for a decade. She didn't say anything for a while, just looked out at the darkening land. "I keep waiting to wake up," she said finally. "Keep expecting this to be a dream, or a trick, or some kind of test I'm going to fail." "It ain't a dream, and it ain't a trick." "Then why? I've been trying to understand ever since you stopped on that road. You could have ridden past. Most men would have." Josiah was quiet for a long moment. "You want the truth?" "Please." "I don't rightly know. When I saw you and them children, something just broke open. Like a door I'd nailed shut 10 years ago suddenly came off its hinges." He shook his head. "I buried my wife and son in the plot behind this house. I swore I'd never feel that kind of pain again. Figured the only way to keep that promise was to not let anyone get close enough to hurt me. Did it work? No. I just traded one kind of pain for another. Loss for loneliness. Grief for emptiness." He looked at her, and even in the darkness, she could see the raw honesty in his eyes. "When I saw your boy, Ezra, standing there with his fists raised, trying to protect you from a man twice his size, I saw myself. I saw what I became after Martha died. Someone so scared of being hurt that I'd fight the whole world rather than let anyone in." Hannah's breath caught. "I don't want to be that man anymore," Josiah said quietly. "And I don't want Ezra to become him either." Tears slipped down Hannah's cheeks. She wiped them away quickly, embarrassed. "I'm sorry," she said. "I don't cry." "I don't. 3 weeks of running, and I didn't shed a single tear. And now you're safe enough to let yourself feel it." She looked at him, and something shifted in the air between them. Not romance, not yet, not now, but recognition. Two broken people who'd found each other in the middle of the desert and somehow stumbled toward hope. "Thank you," she said, "for stopping, for bringing us here, for being the kind of man who does the right thing, even when it costs him." "Hasn't cost me yet." "It will, when Victor Marsden finds out where I am. Then we'll deal with it, together." The word hung in the warm night air. Together. Hannah wrapped her arms around herself, not from cold, but from the overwhelming strangeness of not being alone anymore. "I should get some sleep," she said. "Ruth will be up before dawn." "Kitchen's all yours. Make whatever you like. There's supplies in the pantry, more in the root cellar." "Josiah." She paused at the door, looking back at him. "When this is over, if we survive whatever's coming, I want you to know that I won't forget this. What you've done for us. I'll find a way to repay you." "You already are, just by being here, by filling this house with something besides silence." She smiled then, real and warm, and disappeared inside. Josiah sat on the porch, alone, watching the stars, listening to the sounds of life coming from the house behind him. 10 years of silence. And now, somehow, this. He didn't know what was coming, didn't know if Victor Marsden would find them, or what would happen if he did. Didn't know if this fragile thing taking root in his chest was hope or foolishness, or both. But for the first time in 10 years, he was willing to find out. The summer heat pressed down, thick and unrelenting. Inside, a baby whimpered and then settled. A boy talked in his sleep, something about horses. A woman hummed softly, the same lullaby she'd been singing earlier. Josiah closed his eyes and let himself imagine a future he'd never thought he'd have. Maybe it was foolish, but maybe, just maybe, it was exactly what he needed. The first week passed faster than Josiah expected. Hannah took over the kitchen like she'd been born there, turning his sparse pantry into meals that made Tom and the other hands show up early for supper and linger long after the plates were empty. She didn't just cook, she transformed the house, opening windows that had been shut for years, sweeping corners that had gathered a decade of dust, bringing light into rooms Josiah had kept deliberately dark. He should have minded, should have felt the intrusion like a violation of his grief. Instead, he found himself looking for excuses to come inside during the day. A glass of water, a forgotten tool, anything to hear the sound of her humming in the kitchen, to catch a glimpse of the children playing in the front room. Ezra was the hardest one to crack. The boy had appointed himself his mother's protector, and he took the job seriously. He watched Josiah with those two old eyes, tracking his every movement, cataloging every interaction with Hannah and his siblings, waiting for the other shoe to drop. Josiah understood. He'd been that boy once, standing guard over things he was too young to protect. "You know how to ride?" Josiah asked him on the third morning, finding Ezra already awake and sitting on the porch, watching the sunrise. "Some. Papa taught me before he died." "Want to learn more?" Ezra's expression flickered, suspicion warring with longing. "Why?" "Because a man ought to know how to handle a horse, and because I could use the help moving cattle to the north pasture this afternoon." "I ain't a man. I'm 7. "You're 7 and you've been doing a man's job for 8 months. Seems to me you've earned the right to learn some of the good parts, too." The boy was quiet for a long moment. Then, so softly, Josiah almost missed it. "Mama needs me here." "Your mama needs you to be a boy sometimes, Ezra, not just a soldier." Something cracked in the child's face, just for a second. Then the mask came back up. "1 hour," Ezra said. "Then I come back to check on her." "Fair enough." That afternoon, Josiah put Ezra on the gentlest mare in the stable and watched him transform. The tension drained from his small shoulders. His back straightened. For the first time since Josiah had met him, Ezra Dawson smiled. "I'm doing it," he breathed. "I'm really riding." "You're a natural. Your papa taught you well." "He said," Ezra's voice caught, "he said someday he'd buy me my own horse. A black one with a white star on its forehead. He said we'd ride together every Sunday after church." "What happened to your papa, Ezra?" "Your mama said it was a mining accident." The boy's hands tightened on the reins. "Cave-in. They said it was quick. They said he didn't suffer." His jaw clenched. "But they always say that, don't they? Even when it ain't true." "Sometimes they do." "Do you think he suffered, my papa?" Josiah could have lied, could have given the boy the comfortable fiction that everyone else had offered. But something in Ezra's eyes told him that this child had heard enough lies to last a lifetime. "I don't know," Josiah said honestly. "But I know he loved you. And I know that whatever happened in that mine, his last thought was probably of you and your mama and your brothers and sisters. That's what matters. Not how he died, but how he lived." Ezra stared at him for a long moment. Then he nodded once, fiercely, and turned the horse toward the open pasture. "Race you to the fence," he called over his shoulder. "You're on." They raced. Josiah let the boy win, but only barely. When they got back to the house, Hannah was standing on the porch with Ruth on her hip, watching them. Her face was wet with tears, but she was smiling.
"Thank you," she mouthed.
Josiah tipped his hat and pretended he didn't feel his chest crack open just a little bit more. The second week brought complications. Tom rode in from town with his face set in grim lines and pulled Josiah aside before supper. "There's a man asking questions at the saloon," Tom said quietly. "Well-dressed fellow, fancy horse. Says he's looking for a woman who stole from him. Woman with 4 children, traveling on foot." Josiah's gut tightened. "He give a name?" "Didn't give his own, but he described the woman pretty good. Dark hair, gray eyes, oldest boy about 7 years old." Tom met his eyes. "Matches Mrs. Dawson exactly, boss." "What'd you tell him?" "Nothing. Said I didn't know nothing about any woman with 4 kids. But he was buying drinks for everyone in the place, asking the same questions over and over. Someone's going to talk eventually." "How long you figure we got?" "Day, maybe 2. Depends on how careful folks are with their tongues." Tom paused. "You want me to run 'em off? I got some boys who'd be happy to make 'em feel unwelcome." "No, that'd just confirm his suspicions. We stick to the story. Hannah's my cook, legitimate employment, nothing more." Josiah rubbed his jaw. "But keep an eye out. Let me know if he gets closer." "Will do, boss." Tom walked away, and Josiah stood there in the fading light, feeling the weight of what was coming settle onto his shoulders. He should tell Hannah. She deserved to know that her nightmare was catching up with her. But when he went inside and found her sitting at the kitchen table with Miriam on her lap, reading from an old Bible that had belonged to Martha, the words died in his throat. "Mr. Josiah," Miriam said, wiggling down from her mother's lap. "Mama's teaching me to read. I know all my letters now." "That's wonderful, sweetheart. Show me." The little girl grabbed his hand and pulled him to the table, pointing proudly at the page.
"That's A, and that's B, and that's the letter that starts my name. M."
"You're the smartest 5-year-old I ever met," Miriam beamed. Hannah watched them with soft eyes, and something passed between the adults. Gratitude. Connection. The beginning of something neither of them was ready to name. "Josiah," Hannah said quietly, after Miriam had run off to show her brothers her new skills. "Is something wrong?" "No, nothing's wrong." She studied his face. "You're lying." "I'm not." "You are. Your jaw does this thing when you're holding something back. Gets tight, like you're biting down on words you don't want to say." She stood, moving closer to him. "Whatever it is, I need to know. I can't protect my children from things I can't see coming." Josiah looked at her. This woman who'd walked through fire and come out still fighting, still hoping, still holding her family together through sheer force of will. She deserved the truth. "There's a man in town asking about you," he said. "Matches the description of someone working for Marsden. Tom says he's been buying drinks, loosening tongues." Hannah's face went white. Her hand found the back of a chair and gripped it hard. "How long?" "Day or 2, Tom figures. Could be sooner." "Then we need to leave. Tonight, before he— No. The word came out harder than he intended. Hannah flinched. Hannah, listen to me. Josiah stepped closer, close enough to see the fear flickering in her gray eyes. If you run now, he'll know for certain you're here. He'll follow. You'll be back on the road with 4 children and no supplies, and this time he'll be right behind you. Then what do we do? We stay. We stick to the story. You're my cook. Legitimate employment. If Marsden or his man comes here, he'll find a woman working an honest job, not a fugitive hiding from justice. He has a warrant, Josiah. Papers that say I'm a thief. Papers lie. People lie too, when they're paid enough. He met her eyes. The question is whether you trust me to stand between you and whatever comes through that door. Hannah was quiet for a long moment. Outside, the children's laughter drifted in through the open window. Samuel chasing Lily around the yard, while Ezra pretended not to watch. I trust you, she said finally. God help me. I trust you. Then stay. Fight. Let me help you. And if we lose? We won't. You can't promise that. No, but I can promise I'll die before I let him take you or those children. That's got to count for something. Her eyes filled with tears. One spilled over, tracking down her cheek, and before Josiah could think about what he was doing, he reached up and brushed it away with his thumb. They stood there frozen, his hand against her face, her breath caught in her throat. Josiah, she whispered. The kitchen door banged open. Mama! Ezra's voice was sharp with panic. Mama, there's men coming, on horses! The moment shattered. Hannah pulled back, her hand going to her throat, and Josiah was already moving toward the door. How many? 3. They're coming from the main road. Tom! Josiah bellowed. Gus! Get out here, now! He grabbed his rifle from above the door and stepped onto the porch, putting himself between the approaching riders and the house. Hannah appeared behind him, pushing all 4 children inside. Stay in the kitchen, she told them. Don't come out no matter what you hear. Ezra, you're in charge. Protect your sisters and brother. But Mama, do as I say. The door closed behind them. Hannah moved to stand beside Josiah, her chin lifted, her hands steady despite the fear in her eyes. You should be inside too, Josiah said. Not a chance. Tom and Gus emerged from the bunkhouse, rifles in hand, and positioned themselves on either side of the porch. The 3 riders slowed as they approached, taking in the armed reception. The man in front was the one Tom had described, well-dressed, expensive horse, the kind of polished confidence that came from never hearing the word no. He wasn't Victor Marsden. Josiah had never seen Marsden, but he knew this wasn't him. This man was younger, sharper, the kind you hired to do the dirty work while keeping your own hands clean. Good evening, the man said pleasantly, reining in his horse about 20 feet from the porch. I'm looking for Josiah Crane. Would that be you? Depends on who's asking. My name is Cornelius Wade. I represent certain business interests from Kansas territory. His eyes slid to Hannah, and something hungry flickered there before he masked it. I'm searching for a woman who fled her lawful employment, with property that didn't belong to her. I believe she may have passed through this area. Lot of people pass through. Can't say I keep track of all of them. This woman would be distinctive, traveling on foot with 4 young children. Dark hair, gray eyes, quite pretty despite her circumstances. Wade's smile didn't reach his eyes. I understand you recently hired a new cook, Mr. Crane. Would you mind if I spoke with her? I would, actually. I see. Wade's pleasant expression didn't change, but something cold crept into his voice. Mr. Crane, I should inform you that harboring a fugitive is a serious offense. The woman I'm seeking is wanted for theft in Kansas territory. I have documentation. This is Wyoming territory, Mr. Wade. Whatever papers you've got from Kansas don't mean much here. They mean enough to any judge who values interstate cooperation. Wade reached into his coat pocket, and Tom's rifle came up. Wade paused, then slowly withdrew a folded document. This is a warrant for the arrest of Hannah Dawson on charges of theft and fraud. It authorizes me to take her into custody and return her to Kansas for trial. Show me. Wade nudged his horse forward and held out the paper.
Josiah took it, scanned it quickly. The legal language was dense, but the meaning was clear. Someone with money and influence had paid for this warrant, paid for it to look official and binding.
This says she stole $200 and various supplies, Josiah said. That's a serious accusation. It's a serious crime. Got any proof, besides this paper? The proof is in Kansas, Mr. Crane. Account books, witness statements, inventory records, all thoroughly documented. By who? By her employer, a Mr. Victor Marsden, a respected businessman who tried to force himself on a widow with 4 children. Josiah's voice cut like a blade. A respected businessman who invented debts when she refused him. A respected businessman who's now hunting her across 3 territories because she had the nerve to say no. Wade's mask slipped. Just for a second, Josiah saw the real man underneath. Cold, calculating, enjoying this. Those are serious allegations, Mr. Crane. Allegations that could constitute slander if repeated to the wrong people. I'll take my chances. Will you? Wade leaned forward in his saddle. Let me be very clear. Victor Marsden is a powerful man with considerable resources. He is determined to see Mrs. Dawson brought to justice. If she's here, and I believe she is, you would be wise to surrender her now. Whatever attachment you've developed can only end badly for everyone involved. Is that a threat? It's advice. Good advice. From one man to another. Wade's eyes moved to Hannah, who hadn't spoken or moved since the confrontation began. Mrs. Dawson, I know you can hear me. Whatever this man has promised you, it won't be enough. Mr. Marsden will find you. He always does. Come back now, willingly, and things will go easier for your children. Hannah stepped forward. Her voice was steady, clear, and cold as mountain ice. You tell Victor Marsden something from me.
Tell him I'm not the scared widow he cornered in that kitchen 8 months ago.
Tell him I've got nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. And tell him that if he comes for my children, I will kill him myself. Wade's eyebrows rose. Threatening a respected citizen? That won't look good at your trial, Mrs. Dawson. I ain't going to trial, and you ain't taking me anywhere. Hannah moved to stand directly beside Josiah, shoulder to shoulder. This is my home now. These are my people. And if you want to drag me back to Kansas, you're going to have to go through every single one of us. Silence. The evening air felt thick, charged with tension that could explode into violence at any moment. Wade looked at the armed men, at Hannah's defiant face, at Josiah's steady rifle. He was calculating odds, weighing options. Finally, he smiled. It was the smile of a man who knew he'd lost a battle, but was confident he'd win the war. Very well. I'll take your message to Mr. Marsden. He gathered his reins. But understand this, Mrs. Dawson, this isn't over. It's barely begun. Mr. Marsden doesn't forget. He doesn't forgive. And he doesn't lose. First time for everything, Josiah said. Wade laughed, a cold, humorless sound. Then he wheeled his horse and rode away, his 2 companions following close behind. No one moved until the riders had disappeared over the horizon. Then Hannah's knees buckled.
Josiah caught her before she hit the ground, his rifle clattering to the porch as he grabbed her arms. She was shaking, trembling so hard her teeth chattered. The fear she'd been holding back finally breaking through. "I've got you," he said. "I've got you. They're gone."
"He'll come back. He'll come back with more men, more papers, more—"
"Then we'll be ready."
"You don't understand. Victor never stops. Never. He told me once. He said, 'I've never lost anything that belonged to me.' He meant it. He'll burn this whole ranch to the ground before he lets me go."
"Let him try." Hannah looked up at him, tears streaming down her face.
"Why? Why are you doing this? You could have handed me over. You could have avoided all of this. Why are you fighting for someone you barely know?"
Josiah thought about the question, thought about the silence of the past 10 years, the emptiness, the careful walls he'd built to keep out anything that might hurt him. Thought about the sound of children laughing in rooms that had been quiet for too long. Thought about the way Hannah hummed while she cooked, the way her gray eyes softened when she looked at her children, the way she'd stood beside him just now and refused to break. "Because you're worth fighting for," he said simply. "All of you are." The door burst open and 4 children spilled onto the porch, Ezra in the lead with a kitchen knife clutched in his hand.
"Mama, are you hurt? Did they—" "I'm fine, baby. I'm fine."
Hannah opened her arms, and all 4 of her children crashed into her, holding on like they'd never let go. "We're all fine." Over the tops of their heads, her eyes met Josiah's. "Thank you," she mouthed. He nodded. There was nothing else to say. That night, after the children were asleep and the ranch hands had returned to their bunkhouse, Josiah found Hannah sitting alone in the kitchen, staring at nothing. He sat down across from her without speaking. "I keep thinking about what Wade said," she finally murmured, "about how this has barely begun, about how Victor doesn't lose." Words are cheap, especially from men like him. But he's right, isn't he? Victor has money, lawyers, connections. He has papers that say I'm a criminal. And what do we have? A ranch in the middle of nowhere and a handful of people willing to fight. Sometimes that's enough. And sometimes it isn't. She looked at him, her gray eyes haunted. "I can't let you destroy your life for me, Josiah. You've built something here. Something good. If Victor burns it down, then I'll build it again." "You don't mean that." "I've lost everything that mattered to me once before, Hannah. The house, the life, the future I'd planned. It all disappeared in a single night. I survived it. Barely, but I survived." He reached across the table and took her hand. "What I can't survive is going back to that silence. Going back to being alone in this house, waiting to die because I was too scared to live." Her fingers tightened around his. "Josiah, you and those children, you woke something up in me. Something I thought died with Martha and our son. I ain't giving that up. Not for Victor Marsden, not for 100 men like Cornelius Wade. Not for anything." Hannah stared at him, and he watched the war play out across her face. The fear, the hope, the desperate need to believe that someone was finally on her side. "What if we lose?" she whispered. "Then we lose together." "But I don't plan on losing." A tear slipped down her cheek. She didn't wipe it away. "I don't know how to do this," she said. "I don't know how to let someone help me. I've been fighting alone for so long." "You ain't alone anymore. That's the whole point." She laughed then, a broken, watery sound that was half sob and half genuine joy. "You're a stubborn man, Josiah Crane." "So I've been told." "I don't deserve this. Any of this." "Yes, you do. You deserve a home, safety, peace. You deserve to see your children grow up happy. And I'm going to make sure you get it, even if I have to fight every man between here and Kansas to do it." Hannah stood, still holding his hand. She moved around the table until she was standing in front of him, looking down at his weathered face, his honest eyes, his calloused hands that had held her up when she couldn't stand. "If we survive this," she said quietly, "when we survive this, I want you to know that I'm grateful for everything. For being the man who stopped on that road. For being the man who refused to let us go." "Hannah, I'm not done." She touched his face, her fingers cool against his stubbled jaw. "I'm not ready for whatever this is between us. Not yet. Not with Marsden still out there, still hunting. But when it's over, when my children are truly safe." "When it's over," Josiah said, "I'll wait as long as you need." "Promise?" "Promise." She leaned down and kissed his forehead, a gentle touch, a blessing, a promise of her own. Then she turned and walked to the bedroom where her children were sleeping, closing the door softly behind her. Josiah sat alone in the dark kitchen for a long time, thinking about promises and futures, and the woman who'd collapsed on his doorstep and changed everything. Outside, the summer night hummed with insects and possibilities, and somewhere on the road to Kansas, he knew that Cornelius Wade was riding hard with news that would bring Victor Marsden straight to Wyoming. The storm was coming, but this time, Josiah wasn't going to face it alone. Victor Marsden arrived on the 5th day. Josiah saw the dust cloud from the north pasture, where he'd been working with Ezra on roping. Too many horses, too fast. He grabbed the boy and lifted him onto Shadow in one motion. "Ride to the house. Tell your mama to get inside with the children. Tell Tom to arm up." "What about you?" "I'll be right behind you. Go!" Ezra kicked Shadow into a gallop, and Josiah ran for his own horse tied at the fence line. His heart hammered against his ribs. He'd known this was coming, had been preparing for it every day since Wade rode off. But knowing didn't make it easier. He reached the house just as the riders crested the rise. 8 men, maybe 9, all armed. And in the center, mounted on a black stallion that probably cost more than most men made in a year, was a man who could only be Victor Marsden. Even from a distance, Josiah could see the arrogance, the expensive clothes, the way he sat his horse like he owned everything his eyes touched. Tom and Gus were already on the porch, rifles ready. Hannah stood in the doorway, her face white, but her chin lifted. "Get inside," Josiah said as he dismounted. "No." "Hannah, I said no. I'm done hiding. If he wants me, he can say it to my face." There was no time to argue. The riders had reached the yard. Marsden reined in his horse and surveyed the scene with cold amusement. He was older than Josiah expected, maybe 50, with silver threading through dark hair and a face that might have been handsome, if not for the cruelty in his eyes. "Mrs. Dawson," he said pleasantly, "what a chase you've led me on. 3 territories, countless resources, nearly a month of searching. I must admit, I'm impressed." "I ain't impressed by anything about you," Hannah said, "except maybe your stubbornness." Marsden laughed. It was a hollow sound. "Still that fire. I always admired your spirit, Hannah. It's what drew me to you in the first place." "You were drawn to me because I was vulnerable, because I had children to protect, and no one to protect me. You thought that made me easy prey." "And I was wrong, clearly." His eyes moved to Josiah. "You must be the rancher who's been sheltering my property. Crane, is it?" "She ain't your property. Neither are her children." "Ah, but she owes me money, Mr. Crane. quite a substantial sum, and until that debt is paid, her fate is very much my concern." Marsden reached into his coat and withdrew a folded document. "I have here a warrant for Mrs. Dawson's arrest, signed by a federal judge. I also have authorization to take temporary custody of her children, pending investigation into her fitness as a mother." Hannah made a sound like a wounded animal. "You try to take those children," Josiah said quietly, "and you won't leave this property alive." "Threats, Mr. Crane? In front of witnesses? In front of the sheriff himself?" Marsden gestured, and one of his riders moved forward. Josiah recognized the badge on his chest with a sinking feeling. "Sheriff Coleman rode up from Kansas to assist with the apprehension," Marsden continued. "Everything I'm doing is perfectly legal, perfectly proper. I'm simply a concerned citizen trying to recover what was stolen from me." "You're a predator trying to destroy a woman who had the courage to refuse you." Marsden's pleasant expression flickered. "Be careful, Mr. Crane. Slander has consequences." "So does assault. So does falsifying documents. So does using the law as a weapon against innocent people." The sheriff cleared his throat. He was a heavy man with a weathered face and tired eyes, the kind of man who'd seen too much and stopped caring about justice a long time ago. "Mr. Crane, I don't want trouble, but I've got legal papers that say Mrs. Dawson is wanted in Kansas territory. I'm obligated to execute this warrant. This is Wyoming. Your papers don't mean anything here. They mean something to me, and they'll mean something to your local judge when I present them." The sheriff shifted in his saddle. "Now, we can do this easy, or we can do it hard. Mrs. Dawson comes with us peacefully, and her children will be placed with a respectable family until the matter is resolved in court. Or you can resist, and I'll arrest everyone involved for obstruction of justice." "What about my warrant?" Josiah asked. The sheriff frowned. "What warrant?" "The one I'm going to swear out against Victor Marsden for assault, extortion, and fraud. The one that's going to include testimony from every woman he's done this to over the past 10 years. Marsden went very still. "What are you talking about?" the sheriff demanded. "I'm talking about a pattern, a system. Marsden targets vulnerable women, widows, orphans, anyone without protection. He offers them jobs, makes them dependent on him, then uses fabricated debts to trap them. When they refuse his advances, he has them arrested or committed to asylums." Josiah stepped forward. "Hannah Dawson ain't the first. She's just the first one brave enough to run." "Lies," Marsden said. His voice had gone flat. "Desperate lies from a desperate man." "Then you won't mind if I prove it. Give me 1 week. 1 week to find the other women you've destroyed, to gather their testimony, to build a case against you that'll hold up in any court in the country." "Absolutely not. The warrant is valid now. Mrs. Dawson will be taken into custody now." "Sheriff," Josiah turned to the lawman directly, "you're about to help a monster kidnap a mother and steal her children. Is that really the kind of man you want to be?" Coleman's face reddened. "I'm just doing my job. Your job is to uphold justice, not to help rich men destroy innocent people. The warrant is legal. The warrant is based on lies." Hannah's voice cut through the argument. She stepped off the porch and walked toward the assembled riders, stopping just a few feet from Marsden's horse. "You want to know what really happened in Kansas, Sheriff? I'll tell you. I worked in Victor Marsden's boarding house for 8 months. I cooked, I cleaned, I did everything that was asked of me. And in return, he cornered me in the kitchen one night and put his hands on me while I begged him to stop." "Mrs. Dawson," Marsden began. "I ain't finished." Hannah's voice shook, but she didn't stop. "When I pushed him away, when I told him I'd rather die than let him touch me again, he laughed. He said it didn't matter what I wanted. He said I owed him. He said if I didn't comply, he'd have me arrested for theft and take my children. These are the ravings of a disturbed woman, Marsden said to the sheriff. I warned you about her mental state. Look at me, Sheriff Coleman. Hannah pointed at her own face. Do I look disturbed to you? Do I look like a woman who doesn't know the difference between truth and lies? The sheriff wouldn't meet her eyes. I ran because I had no choice. Because the law in Kansas belongs to men like Victor Marsden, men who can buy judges and sheriffs and make any accusation stick. I ran because my children's lives depended on it. A touching story, Marsden said coldly, but stories aren't evidence. I have documentation, witness statements, account books, all of which you fabricated, the same way you fabricated them for Catherine Hollis and Martha Reed and every other woman you've destroyed. Something flickered in Marsden's eyes.
Just for a second. Then the mask was back. I have no idea who those women are. Catherine Hollis worked for you 4 years ago. When she refused you, you had her committed to an asylum in Missouri. She's still there, as far as anyone knows. Hannah's voice grew stronger. Martha Reed was before her. She disappeared completely. Some say she fled to California. Others say she's dead. And before her, there was... Enough! Marsden's voice cracked like a whip. Sheriff, execute the warrant, now. Hold on. Coleman held up a hand. His expression had changed, less certain now, more troubled. Mr. Crane, you said you could prove this? That there are other women? Give me a week, and I'll have testimony that'll blow this case wide open. 1 week is too long, Marsden snapped. She could flee. She won't flee. Josiah looked at Hannah. Will you? I'm done running. If this is where we make our stand, then this is where we make it. Coleman rubbed his jaw. He was clearly caught between the money Marsden had paid him and the uncomfortable feeling that he might be on the wrong side of this fight. 3 days, he said finally. I'll give you 3 days to produce evidence that Mr. Marsden has a pattern of this behavior. If you can't, I execute the warrant, and Mrs. Dawson comes back to Kansas with us. That's unacceptable, Marsden said. That's my decision. Coleman's voice hardened. I don't know what's true here, Mr. Marsden, but I know I don't want to be part of tearing children from their mother if there's any chance she's telling the truth. 3 days won't make a difference if you're right. And if you're wrong... He didn't finish the sentence. Marsden's face had gone the color of raw meat. For a moment, Josiah thought he might order his men to attack anyway, legal authority be damned. Then the mask slid back into place. 3 days, Mr. Crane. Enjoy them. Because when you fail, and you will fail, I'm going to make sure you lose everything. Your ranch, your reputation, everything. Looking forward to it. Marsden wheeled his horse and rode out, his men following. The sheriff lingered for a moment. I hope you know what you're doing, he said to Josiah. Because if you can't deliver on what you promised, it's going to be bad for everyone. I know. Coleman shook his head and followed the others. The moment they were gone, Hannah's legs gave out. Josiah caught her before she hit the ground, holding her up as the strength drained from her body. I've got you, he said. I've got you. 3 days. He gave us 3 days. And we're going to use every minute of it. How? Catherine Hollis is in an asylum in Missouri. Martha Reed could be anywhere, or nowhere. How do we find these women in 3 days? Josiah didn't have an answer. But before he could admit it, Tom stepped forward. Boss, I might know someone who can help. Who? There's a woman in town, name's Edith Pruitt. Used to run a boarding house before Marsden bought her out. Word is, she knows things. Things about what goes on in his businesses. Things he'd rather keep quiet. Why would she help us?
Because he destroyed her, too. Different way, but same result. She lost everything when he came to town. Been waiting 10 years for someone to stand up to him. Hannah grabbed Josiah's arm. We have to talk to her. Tonight. You need to rest. I'll rest when my children are safe. Right now, we need to move. Tom was already heading for the barn to saddle horses. Gus stayed behind to watch the ranch and the children. Ezra had tried to come with them, but Hannah had knelt down and taken his face in her hands. I need you here, she'd said. I need you to protect your brother and sisters. Can you do that for me? But, Mama, you're the bravest boy I know, Ezra.
And right now, the bravest thing you can do is stay here and keep them safe. The boy had nodded, his jaw tight, and watched them ride away with eyes too old for his face. Now they were in town, standing outside a small house at the edge of the main street. The windows were dark, but smoke rose from the chimney. Josiah knocked. Silence. Then shuffling footsteps, and the door cracked open. Who's there? Mrs. Pruitt? My name's Josiah Crane. This is Hannah Dawson. We need to talk to you about Victor Marsden. The door slammed shut. Please, Hannah called. I know you're scared. I know what he's capable of. But he's coming for me and my children, and if we don't stop him now, he'll just keep doing this. Keep destroying women like us. Nothing. Mrs. Pruitt, I worked in his boarding house in Kansas. He cornered me, threatened me, tried to... Hannah's voice broke. I ran with 4 children, walked until my feet bled, almost died in the desert. And now he's here, with a warrant and a sheriff, and enough money to make any lie sound like truth. Silence stretched. Then the door opened. Edith Pruitt was older than Josiah expected, maybe 60, with gray hair pulled back in a severe bun, and eyes that had seen too much pain to be surprised by anything anymore. Come in, she said quietly, before someone sees you. Inside, she lit a lamp and gestured to a worn settee. I heard about you, she said to Hannah. The woman from Kansas who ran from Victor. People have been talking. What are they saying? Some say you're a thief, like he claims. Others say you're a fool for thinking you could escape. But a few... Edith's eyes softened. A few say you're the bravest woman they've ever heard of. I'm not brave. I'm just desperate. Sometimes that's the same thing. Edith sat down heavily. What do you want from me? Information. Tom said you might know about other women Marsden has targeted. We need to find them. We need their testimony. Edith was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke, her voice was hollow. Catherine Hollis. She worked for Victor about 4 years back. Pretty girl, young, no family to protect her. When she refused him, he had her committed to the Missouri State Asylum. Said she'd had a nervous breakdown. Is she still there? Far as I know. I tried to help her once, sent money to the asylum, asked about her condition. They said she was improving, but wasn't ready for release. That was 2 years ago. What about Martha Reed? Edith's face darkened. Martha didn't survive. She threw herself in the river about 6 months after Victor started in on her. They found her body downstream. Hannah made a strangled sound. There were others before them, Edith continued. A woman named Sarah Jennings. She married a minor twice her age just to get away. Died in childbirth a year later. And before her... She shook her head. The list goes on. Victor's been doing this for at least 15 years that I know of. And nobody stopped him? Nobody could. He owns half the county in Kansas. Judges, sheriffs, bankers, they all owe him something. Anyone who speaks against him ends up ruined or dead. Then why are you talking to us? Josiah asked. Edith looked at him with tired eyes.
Because I'm old. Because I've got nothing left to lose. And because I've been waiting a long time for someone brave enough to fight back. She stood and moved to a small desk in the corner, pulling out a bundle of papers tied with string. I've been keeping records, names, dates, everything I could document about what Victor's done. It's not much, nothing that would hold up in a federal court, but it might be enough to cast doubt on his story. Hannah took the papers with shaking hands. Why did you keep this? Because someday I knew someone would come. Someone who needed the truth more than they feared the consequences. Edith's mouth twisted. I just never thought I'd live to see it. Mrs. Pruitt, would you testify? In front of a judge? Tell them what you know. The old woman was silent for a long moment. Then she nodded. I'll testify. God help me, I'll testify. Victor Marsden has had this territory under his thumb for too long. It's time someone cut him down to size. Thank you, Hannah whispered. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. We still need Catherine Hollis. My word alone won't be enough. I'm just a bitter old woman who lost her business to a competitor. But if you can get Catherine to talk, if you can prove what he did to her, how do we get her out of the asylum? Edith pulled out another piece of paper. I have the name of a doctor there, man named Whitmore. He's written to me before, seemed troubled by Catherine's case, like he knew something wasn't right. If anyone can help you see her, it's him. Josiah looked at the paper, then at Hannah.
Missouri's 2 days' ride from here. We've got 3 days total. Then we leave tonight, Hannah said. Hannah, you're exhausted. I'll rest when my children are safe. She stood, her jaw set. Every minute we waste is a minute Marsden uses to tighten his grip. We go tonight. There was no arguing with her. There never was when it came to her children. They rode out an hour later, leaving Tom to watch over the ranch and the children. Ezra had cried when they left, the first time Josiah had seen the boy show that kind of weakness. Come back, he'd begged his mother. Promise you'll come back. I promise, baby. I promise. But as they rode through the darkness, Josiah could see the fear in Hannah's eyes, the uncertainty, the terrible knowledge that promises didn't always survive contact with men like Victor Marsden. They pushed the horses hard through the night, stopping only when the animals needed rest. By dawn, they'd crossed into Nebraska territory. By midday, they were closing on the Missouri border. Tell me about your wife, Hannah said during one of their brief stops. Josiah looked up from the stream where he was watering his horse. What? Your wife, Martha. You never talk about her. Not much to tell. We were young. We were in love. We thought we had forever. He stood, wiping his hands on his pants. Then forever turned out to be 3 years. How did she die? Childbirth. Baby came too early, too small. Neither of them made it through the night. I'm sorry. It was a long time ago. Does that make it hurt less? Josiah was quiet for a moment. No, it just makes the pain familiar, like an old scar that aches when the weather changes. Hannah moved closer to him. Is that why you helped us? Because we reminded you of what you lost? Maybe, at first. He met her eyes. But not anymore. Now I help you because of who you are, who your children are. What you've built out of nothing but love and determination. Josiah, I know this ain't the time. I know we've got bigger things to worry about. But when this is over, Hannah, when Marsden is beaten and your children are safe, I want you to know that I'm not going anywhere. Whatever you need, however long you need it, I'm here. She reached up and touched his face, her fingers cool against his stubbled jaw. I know, she whispered. I've known for a while now. And when this is over,
We'll figure it out together. All of us. It wasn't a declaration. It wasn't a promise of forever. But it was enough. They reached the Missouri State Asylum on the morning of the second day. It was a grim building. Gray stone walls, barred windows, the kind of place that made your soul shrink just looking at it. Josiah felt Hannah shudder as they approached. "I can go in alone," he offered. "You don't have to—" "Yes, I do. Catherine needs to see that another woman believes her, that she's not alone." They tied their horses and approached the main entrance. A severe-looking nurse met them in the lobby. "Visiting hours are in the afternoon," she said flatly. "Come back at 2 o'clock. "We're not here to visit. We need to speak with Dr. Whitmore. It's urgent." "Dr. Whitmore is with patients. Tell him it's about Catherine Hollis. Tell him we have information about why she's really here." The nurse's expression flickered. Surprise, then something that might have been hope. "Wait here." 10 minutes later, a thin man with wire-rimmed glasses emerged from a side corridor. His face was drawn, tired, but his eyes were sharp. "I'm Dr. Whitmore. You wanted to speak with me about Catherine Hollis? Is there somewhere private we can talk?" He led them to a small office and closed the door. "Who are you people?" "My name is Hannah Dawson. I worked for the same man who had Catherine committed. He tried to do to me what he did to her." Whitmore went very still. "Victor Marsden," he said quietly. "I suspected something was wrong with Catherine's case from the beginning. The way she was admitted, no family involvement, no proper evaluation, just a signed commitment paper and a large donation to the institution. She's not crazy, is she? She was traumatized when she arrived, severely. Whatever happened to her before she came here broke something inside her. But crazy?" He shook his head. "No. Catherine Hollis is one of the sanest patients I've ever treated. She just stopped talking because she learned that no one would believe her anyway." "We'll believe her," Hannah said, "and we need her to testify. In 2 days, a sheriff is going to execute a warrant against me. He's going to take my children and hand me over to the man who did this to Catherine. The only way to stop him is to prove there's a pattern." Whitmore looked from Hannah to Josiah and back. "If I let you see her, if she agrees to leave with you, I could lose my position. I could lose everything. You could also help bring down a monster who's been destroying women for 15 years. The doctor was silent for a long moment. Then he stood. "Follow me." Catherine Hollis was thin, pale, with dark hair that hung limp around a face that might have been pretty once. She sat by a window, staring at nothing, her hands folded in her lap. "Catherine," Dr. Whitmore spoke gently, "there are some people here to see you. They want to talk about Victor Marsden." No response. No movement. Nothing. Hannah knelt beside her chair. "Catherine, my name is Hannah. I worked for Victor too. He did to me what he did to you. Cornered me, put his hands on me, threatened to destroy my life when I refused him." Still nothing. "I have 4 children, Catherine. 4 beautiful children who need their mother. And in 2 days Victor Marsden is going to take them away from me, unless I can prove what kind of man he really is." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, Catherine's head turned, her eyes focused on Hannah's face. "You ran," she whispered. Her voice was rusty from disuse. "I heard them talking about you. The woman from Kansas who ran. I ran because I didn't want to end up like you. Locked away, silenced, forgotten." Hannah took Catherine's hands. "But I came back. I came back because the only way to beat him is to stop running and start fighting." Tears began to slide down Catherine's hollow cheeks. "He told me no one would believe me. He told me I was crazy. He told me—" "He lied. About everything. And we can prove it. But only with your help." Catherine's grip tightened on Hannah's hands.
What do you need me to do? Come with us. Tell your story to a judge. Help us stop him from ever doing this again. For a long moment, Catherine didn't move. Then something shifted in her face. Something like life returning to eyes that had been dead for 4 years. Yes, she said. Yes, I'll do it. Dr. Whitmore signed the release papers himself. It would probably cost him his career, but watching Catherine walk out of that asylum for the first time in 4 years, there was no regret in his eyes. Make it count, he said to Josiah. Make all of this count. We will. They rode through the night again, pushing even harder now. Catherine was weak, unused to travel, but she never complained. She sat behind Hannah on the horse, holding on with arms that had grown stronger with every mile away from the asylum. Tell me about your children, she said as they rode. So Hannah told her, about Ezra's fierce protectiveness, about Miriam's determination to learn reading, about Samuel's quiet sweetness, and Lily's infectious laugh, and baby Ruth's first steps. They sound wonderful, Catherine said. They are. They're everything. I always wanted children. Catherine's voice was wistful. Before Victor, before everything, I used to dream about having a family, a home, someone who loved me. It's not too late. Maybe not. Catherine was quiet for a moment. If we survive this, I think I'd like to start over. Somewhere far from Kansas. Somewhere Victor Marsden has never heard of. You could stay with us, at the ranch. There's room. You'd do that? For a stranger? You're not a stranger, Hannah said. You're a survivor. Like me. They reached the ranch at dawn on the 3rd day, exhausted, filthy, and running on nothing but fear and determination. Tom met them in the yard, his face grim. They're here, he said. Marsden and the sheriff arrived an hour ago. They're waiting in town for you to show. Hannah's hand found Josiah's. Then let's not keep them waiting. They rode into town together, Josiah, Hannah, Catherine, and Tom. The main street was crowded, word having spread that something big was about to happen. Marsden stood on the courthouse steps, flanked by his men. Sheriff Coleman waited beside him, looking increasingly uncomfortable. Mrs. Dawson, Marsden called out as they approached. So good of you to return. I was beginning to think you'd fled again. I'm done running. Are you? Then perhaps you're ready to face the consequences of your actions. Sheriff, if you please. Wait. Josiah dismounted and helped Catherine down. Before you execute anything, Sheriff, I think you should hear what this woman has to say. Marsden's face went white. Catherine, he breathed. Hello, Victor. Catherine's voice was steady, stronger than it had been in the asylum. Did you miss me? The silence that followed Catherine's words was absolute. Victor Marsden stared at the woman he'd locked away 4 years ago, and for the first time since Josiah had met him, the mask cracked completely. Fear. Real fear, bleeding through the arrogance like water through a broken dam. This woman is mentally unstable, Marsden said quickly. She was committed to an asylum for good reason. Whatever she's told you is the product of a diseased mind. Is that so? Catherine stepped forward, and the crowd parted before her. Then why are you shaking, Victor? Why does your voice sound like a man who's seen a ghost? I'm not. You are. I can see it. 4 years in that place, and I learned to read people. I learned to see the truth behind the lies. She turned to Sheriff Coleman. He had me committed because I refused to let him touch me. He forged documents saying I was crazy. He paid doctors to sign papers they never should have signed. And he thought I'd rot in that asylum forever, too broken to ever tell anyone what he did.
"These are the ravings of a disturbed woman," Marsden said to Coleman. "You can't possibly take her word over mine." "Maybe not her word alone." Josiah stepped forward. "But what about Mrs. Edith Pruitt's word? She's got 10 years of documentation on your activities, Marsden.
Names, dates, everything you did to every woman you destroyed. Marsden's face went gray. "And what about Dr. Whitmore's word?" Josiah continued. "The physician at the asylum who released Catherine because he knew something was wrong with her case from the beginning. The physician who's willing to testify that Catherine Hollis was never mentally ill, just traumatized by what you did to her." "This is a conspiracy," Marsden sputtered. "A coordinated attack on my reputation by people who want to see me destroyed." "No, Victor," Hannah's voice cut through his protests. "This is justice. Finally, after 15 years of you preying on women who had no one to protect them. This is what happens when the people you broke find each other and decide to fight back." Sheriff Coleman looked between Marsden and the three women facing him. His expression had shifted from reluctant enforcement to genuine uncertainty. "Mr. Crane, you said you had documentation?" "I do. Mrs. Pruitt's records, Doctor. Whitmore's medical notes, and testimony from 2 women who survived what Marsden did to them." Josiah pulled the bundle of papers from his saddlebag. "It's all here, Sheriff. Every bit of it." Coleman took the papers and began to read. Marsden moved toward him. "Sheriff, you can't seriously be considering—" "Quiet!" Coleman didn't look up. "I'm reading." The crowd pressed closer, sensing that something momentous was happening. Josiah felt Hannah's hand slip into his, and he squeezed it gently. Whatever happened next, they'd done everything they could. Coleman read for what felt like an eternity. When he finally looked up, his face was troubled. "This is serious, Mr. Marsden. These documents suggest a pattern of behavior that goes back over a decade. Forgeries, all of them. Then you won't mind if I verify them. I'll need to telegraph the authorities in Kansas, Missouri, and Nebraska. Get confirmation of these claims." "That could take weeks." "Then it takes weeks." Coleman's voice hardened. "Until I'm satisfied that the warrant against Mrs. Dawson is legitimate, I'm suspending its execution." "You can't do that." "I just did." The sheriff folded the papers and tucked them into his coat. "Mr. Marsden, I'd suggest you remain in town while I conduct my investigation. If these allegations turn out to be true, you'll have a lot more to worry about than one runaway cook." Marsden's face contorted with rage. For a moment, Josiah thought he might order his men to attack, witnesses be damned. Then Cornelius Wade leaned in and whispered something in his ear. Marsden's expression smoothed into something cold and calculating. "Very well, Sheriff. Conduct your investigation. I have nothing to hide." He looked at Hannah, and the hatred in his eyes made Josiah's blood run cold. "But understand this, Mrs. Dawson. When this is over, when your lies are exposed and your so-called witnesses are discredited, I will make sure you never see your children again." "That sounds like a threat," Josiah said quietly. "It's a promise." Marsden turned and walked away, his men following. Wade lingered for a moment, his eyes moving between Josiah and Hannah, with an expression that promised trouble. Then he was gone too. The crowd began to disperse, buzzing with whispered conversations. Sheriff Coleman approached Josiah. "You bought yourself some time, Mr. Crane, but I hope you understand what you've started. If these allegations don't hold up, Marsden will come for all of you, and he won't be merciful." "I understand. Do you?" Coleman looked at Hannah, at Catherine, at the papers in his coat. "I've seen men like Marsden before. They don't lose gracefully. They don't accept defeat. They burn everything down rather than admit they were wrong." "Then we'll be ready." Coleman shook his head slowly. "I hope so, for all your sakes." He walked away toward the telegraph office,
leaving them alone in the emptying street. Hannah let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for hours. "We did it," she whispered. "We actually did it." "Not yet," Josiah said. "We bought time, that's all. The real fight is still coming." "But we have a chance now, a real chance." Catherine moved to stand beside them. She was trembling, with exhaustion, with emotion, with the weight of finally facing her tormentor after 4 years of silence. "Thank you," she said to Hannah, "for coming to get me, for believing me when no one else would." "We believe each other," Hannah said, taking her hand. "That's what he never understood. He thought he could isolate us, make us think we were alone. But we found each other, and together, we're stronger than anything he can throw at us." "Let's get back to the ranch," Josiah said. "The children will be worried." The ride back was quiet, each of them lost in their own thoughts. But when they crested the rise and the ranch came into view, Josiah heard Hannah gasp. Ezra was running toward them, his face streaked with tears. "Mama! Mama!" Hannah was off her horse before it fully stopped, catching her son in her arms. "What is it? What happened?" "Men came while you were gone. They took Miriam." The world stopped. Josiah dismounted, his heart slamming against his ribs. "What men? When?" "An hour ago, maybe 2. Ezra was sobbing now, his whole body shaking. "They said they were taking her for her own protection. They said Mama was a criminal and we'd all be better off with proper families. Gus tried to stop them, but there were too many. They hit him. They hit him and took Miriam, and I couldn't stop them." Hannah made a sound like a wounded animal. "Where's Gus?" Josiah demanded. "Inside. He's hurt bad." Josiah ran for the house, Hannah right behind him, with Ezra still clutched in her arms. Gus was on the kitchen floor, Tom kneeling beside him with a bloody cloth pressed to his head. The old ranch hand's face was pale, his breathing shallow. "Boss," Gus whispered. "I'm sorry. I tried. There were 6 of them. I couldn't." "Don't talk. Save your strength." Josiah turned to Tom. "How bad?" "Bad. He needs a doctor." "Then ride into town and get one. Now." Tom was already moving. Hannah had set Ezra down and was checking on the other children. Samuel was crying quietly in a corner. Lily was clutching her doll with white-knuckled hands. Baby Ruth was in her cradle, oblivious to the chaos around her. But Miriam was gone. "This was Marsden," Hannah said. Her voice was flat, dead. "He took my daughter." "We'll get her back." "How?" "He has her, Josiah. He has my baby girl, and we don't even know where he took her." "We'll find out." "How?" Hannah spun on him, her grief transforming into rage. "He's had an hour. He could be anywhere by now. And even if we find him, he's got men, guns, the law on his side." "He doesn't have the law anymore." Coleman suspended the warrant. "You think that matters to a man like Victor Marsden? He doesn't care about the law. He never did. The law is just a tool he uses to get what he wants. And when it stops working, he throws it away and takes what he wants anyway." She was right. Josiah knew she was right. But he couldn't accept it. Couldn't accept that a 5-year-old girl was in the hands of a monster, scared and alone, and wondering why her mother didn't come to save her. "Ezra," Josiah knelt down to the boy's level. "The men who took Miriam, did you hear them say anything? Anything about where they were going?" Ezra shook his head, then stopped. "Wait. One of them said something to the others. Something about a cabin. He said they'd take her to the cabin until the boss decided what to do with her." "A cabin? What cabin?" "I don't know. But he said it was north of the creek." Josiah stood, his mind racing. There was an old hunting cabin about 10 miles north, abandoned for years but still standing.
It would be the perfect place to hide someone while waiting for the heat to die down. I know where they are. Then let's go. Hannah grabbed his arm. Let's go get her. Hannah, you need to stay here. Watch the other children. If Marsden sends more men, I am not staying behind while my daughter is out there. And what happens if we both go and something happens to us? What happens to Ezra and Samuel and Lily and Ruth? Hannah's face crumpled. You can't ask me to choose between my children. I'm not asking you to choose. I'm asking you to trust me. Josiah took her face in his hands. I will bring Miriam back. I swear it on my life. But I need to know the others are safe while I do it. Tears streamed down Hannah's cheeks. If anything happens to her, it won't. I won't let it. Promise me. I promise. He kissed her forehead, then turned and ran for the barn. Catherine followed. I'm coming with you, she said. No, you're exhausted. You need rest. I've been resting for 4 years. I'm done resting. She grabbed a saddle from the wall. Besides, if Miriam is scared, and she will be scared, she might feel better seeing a woman's face. Someone gentle. Someone safe. There was no time to argue. Josiah saddled 2 horses, and they rode out into the gathering dusk. The cabin was exactly where Josiah remembered it, a ramshackle structure nestled in a stand of pines, barely visible from the main trail. As they approached, he saw horses tied outside. 3 of them. 3 men, he whispered to Catherine. Maybe more inside. What's the plan? Get Miriam out, whatever it takes. That's not much of a plan. It's all I've got. They dismounted and crept closer, keeping to the shadows. Through a gap in the cabin wall, Josiah could see movement inside. Voices drifted out, men talking, laughing, and then, cutting through everything, a child's cry. I want my mama! Please! I want my mama! Miriam. Something in Josiah's chest turned to ice, then to fire. He stood up and walked straight toward the cabin. Crane! Catherine hissed. What are you doing? He didn't answer, didn't stop, just kept walking until he reached the door and kicked it open. 3 men. One of them was Cornelius Wade, sitting at a table with a bottle of whiskey. The other 2 were standing near a corner where Miriam huddled, her small body shaking with sobs. Mr. Crane, Wade didn't seem surprised. I wondered how long it would take you to find us. Let her go. I'm afraid I can't do that. Mr. Marsden has plans for this child. Plans that don't include returning her to a criminal mother. Hannah Dawson is not a criminal, and you know it. What I know doesn't matter. What matters is what can be proven in court. And right now, the only thing that's been proven is that Mrs. Dawson is a thief who fled lawful prosecution. Wade stood, his hand moving toward his gun. You, on the other hand, have just committed breaking and entering with apparent intent to commit kidnapping. That's going to look very bad for you. I don't care how it looks. You should, because when this is over, you're going to prison. Your ranch will be seized, and Mrs. Dawson's children will be distributed to families who can provide them with proper care. Wade smiled. Including this one. Mr. Marsden has already expressed interest in personally overseeing Miriam's upbringing. The words hit Josiah like a physical blow. You're monsters, all of you. We're businessmen, Mr. Crane. We see value where others see waste. Mrs. Dawson refused to see her own value. That was her mistake. Now her children will pay for it. Josiah looked at Miriam, at her tear-streaked face, her terrified eyes, her small hands clutching each other in desperate prayer. Miriam, he said gently, I need you to close your eyes. Can you do that for me? Close your eyes and count to 10. The little girl nodded and squeezed her eyes shut. Josiah moved. The first man went down before he could draw his gun, Josiah's fist connecting with his jaw hard enough to send teeth flying. The second man got his weapon halfway out of its holster before Josiah's boot caught him in the chest, slamming him into the wall. Wade had his gun up and pointed. His finger tightened on the trigger. A rifle shot exploded from behind Josiah, and Wade screamed, his gun spinning away as the bullet tore through his hand. Catherine stood in the doorway, Josiah's rifle pressed to her shoulder, her face as cold and hard as winter ice. "That was for the asylum," she said quietly. "The next one is for Miriam. Your choice." Wade clutched his bleeding hand, his face twisted with pain and shock. "You shot me. You actually shot me." "I spent 4 years learning to be very patient. I also spent 4 years thinking about what I'd do if I ever got the chance to hurt the people who hurt me." Catherine stepped closer. "This seems like a good start." Josiah didn't waste time. He crossed to Miriam and scooped her into his arms. The little girl's eyes flew open, and for a moment, terror flashed across her face. Then she recognized him. "Mr. Josiah!" "I've got you, sweetheart. I've got you. We're going home." "I want Mama. I want Mama." "I know. We're going to her right now." He carried her past the groaning men, past Catherine with her rifle still raised, out into the cool evening air. Miriam buried her face in his neck and cried, great, gulping sobs that shook her entire body. "It's okay," Josiah murmured, mounting his horse with the child still in his arms. "It's okay. You're safe now. Nobody's ever going to hurt you again." Catherine emerged a moment later, the rifle still in her hands. "I tied them up," she said. "They won't follow."
What about Wade's hand?
"He'll live, unfortunately." They rode hard through the darkness, pushing the horses as fast as they dared, with Miriam clutched against Josiah's chest. The little girl had stopped crying, but she clung to him with a desperate strength that made his heart ache. The ranch came into view just as the moon rose full and bright over the mountains. Hannah was on the porch before they've even stopped, running toward them with her arms outstretched. "Miriam, baby!" Josiah handed the child down, and Hannah crushed her daughter against her chest with a sob that seemed to come from somewhere deeper than grief. My baby girl. Are you hurt? Did they hurt you?" "I'm okay, Mama. Mr. Josiah saved me. He and the lady saved me." Hannah looked up at Josiah, tears streaming down her face. "You kept your promise." "Always." She reached up with one hand, the other still holding Miriam, and pulled him down into a kiss. It was brief, fierce, and full of everything they hadn't had time to say. When they broke apart, Ezra was standing in the doorway with Samuel and Lily behind him. "You got her back," the boy said. His voice was thick with emotion. "You actually got her back." "I told you I would." Ezra's control finally broke. He ran to Josiah and threw his arms around him, holding on like he'd never let go. "Thank you," he sobbed. "Thank you, thank you, thank you." Josiah held the boy and felt something shift inside him. Something that had been frozen for 10 years, finally, completely thawed. This was his family now, all of them, and he would protect them with everything he had. The next morning, Sheriff Coleman rode out to the ranch with news. "Wade and his men are in custody," he said. "They're singing like canaries. Turns out kidnapping a child is where they draw the line, especially when they're facing prison time for it." "What are they saying?" "Everything. Wade gave us Marsden on a silver platter. The forged documents, the bribed judges, the women he's had committed or killed over the years. All of it." Coleman shook his head. "I've been a lawman for 20 years, and I've never heard anything like it. The man is a monster." "Where is he now?" "Gone. Fled in the night when he heard Wade had been captured. But we've put out word to every sheriff between here and the Pacific. He won't get far." Hannah stepped onto the porch, Miriam on her hip.
What about the warrant against me? Dismissed. Based on Wade's testimony and the evidence you provided, it's clear the charges were fabricated. You're a free woman, Mrs. Dawson. Coleman tipped his hat. I'm sorry for the trouble. I should have looked harder at Marsden's claims before I agreed to enforce them. You gave us 3 days. That's more than most would have done. Maybe, but it wasn't enough. A little girl got taken because I didn't see what was right in front of me. The sheriff's face was troubled. I'll have to live with that. He rode away, and Hannah let out a long, shaky breath. It's over, she said. It's really over. Not quite. Josiah put his arm around her. Marsden is still out there. But the warrant is dismissed. The charges are dropped. He has no legal hold on me anymore. Men like Marsden don't need legal holds. They need revenge. Hannah looked up at him. You think he'll come back? I think he won't stop until someone stops him, permanently. Then we'll be ready. Hannah's jaw set with familiar determination. We've beaten him twice now. We can beat him again. We can, but I'd rather not spend the rest of our lives looking over our shoulders. Catherine emerged from the house, where she'd been resting after the ordeal of the night before. She moved slowly, carefully, but there was color in her cheeks that hadn't been there before. I have an idea, she said, about how to stop Marsden for good. We're listening. Wade talked about other women besides me and Martha and Sarah. Women Marsden hurt, who were still out there, still living with what he did to them. Catherine's eyes were fierce. What if we found them, all of them? What if we brought them together and built a case so strong that no court in the country could ignore it? That could take months, years. Maybe, but it would also mean he could never hurt anyone again. It would mean justice, real justice, for every woman he's destroyed. Hannah was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. She's right. Running and hiding, defending ourselves when he attacks, that's not enough. We need to go on the offensive. We need to make sure he can never do this to anyone else. Josiah looked at the 2 women standing before him. Survivors, fighters, the bravest people he'd ever known. All right, he said. Let's do it. That night, after the children were asleep and Catherine had retired to the spare room, Josiah and Hannah sat on the porch, watching the stars. A lot has changed since you collapsed on that road, Josiah said. Everything has changed. Hannah leaned her head against his shoulder. I came here with nothing. No money, no hope, no future. Just 4 children and a desperate prayer that someone, somewhere, would help us. And now? Now I have a home, a family, people who would die to protect my children. She looked up at him. I have you. You do, for as long as you want me. That might be a very long time. I'm counting on it. She kissed him then, soft and slow, and Josiah felt the last of his walls crumble into dust. 10 years of silence, 10 years of grief, 10 years of telling himself he'd never love again. And then Hannah Dawson had fallen at his feet, and everything had changed. Marry me, he said. The words came out before he could stop them, before he could think about timing or propriety, or any of the reasons why it was too soon, too fast, too everything. Hannah pulled back, her eyes wide. What? I know it's sudden. I know we've barely had time to breathe, but I don't want to wait anymore. I don't want to spend another day wondering what might have been. He took her face in his hands. I love you, Hannah. I love your children. I want to spend the rest of my life building something good with all of you. Josiah. You don't have to answer now. You can think about it. Take all the time you need. I just wanted you to know that this isn't temporary for me. This isn't just protection or obligation or charity. This is everything. Hannah was crying, but she was also smiling. Yes, she whispered. Yes? Yes, I'll marry you, Josiah Crane. I'll spend the rest of my life with you, and build something good, and love you until there's no breath left in my body. He kissed her again, and this time it tasted like forever. The wedding was set for the first Sunday in September. Hannah had wanted something small, just family and the ranch hands, but word spread through town like wildfire. The widow who'd stood up to Victor Marsden, the rancher who'd risked everything to protect her, the children who'd walked through hell and come out the other side. People wanted to celebrate. People wanted to believe that good could triumph over evil, that love could bloom in the harshest soil, that happy endings were still possible in a world that seemed determined to crush them. So the small ceremony became something larger. Neighbors arrived with covered dishes and wildflowers. Mrs. Holstead from the Mercantile brought a bolt of white fabric she'd been saving for something special. Even Sheriff Coleman showed up, looking uncomfortable in his Sunday best, but determined to pay his respects. The morning of the wedding, Hannah stood in the bedroom that had become hers, staring at herself in the mirror Martha had once used. "You look beautiful, Mama." She turned to find Miriam in the doorway, wearing the blue dress Hannah had sewn from scraps of fabric donated by the women in town. "Thank you, baby. Are you ready?" "I think so." Miriam walked closer, her small face serious. "Mama, is Mr. Josiah going to be our papa now?" Hannah knelt down to her daughter's level. "Would you like him to be?" "I think so. He's nice. He saved me from the bad men." Miriam's brow furrowed. "But I don't want to forget my real papa, the one who died." "Oh, sweetheart." Hannah pulled her daughter close. "You'll never forget your papa. He's part of you, part of all of us. Loving Josiah doesn't mean we stop loving your father. It just means our hearts get bigger, big enough to hold them both." "Hearts can do that?" "Hearts can do amazing things. I didn't think mine could love again after your papa died. But then Josiah showed me that love isn't like water in a bucket. It doesn't run out when you share it. It grows." Miriam considered this. "So we can love Papa and Mr. Josiah both?" "That's exactly right." "Good." Miriam smiled, and it was like the sun breaking through clouds. "Then I'm ready." The ceremony took place on the porch, where Hannah had first collapsed, where Josiah had carried her inside and saved her life. It seemed fitting somehow. A place of near death transformed into a place of new beginnings. Ezra walked his mother down the steps, his young face solemn with a weight of responsibility. He'd insisted, said it was what his father would have wanted. Josiah waited at the bottom, cleaned up better than Hannah had ever seen him. His hair was combed, his boots were polished, and he wore a new shirt that Tom had ridden into town to buy specially for the occasion. But it was his eyes that made Hannah's breath catch. The way he looked at her, like she was the answer to every prayer he'd stopped believing in. "You're beautiful," he said as she reached him. "You're not so bad yourself." The preacher cleared his throat. "Shall we begin?" They exchanged vows under a sky so blue it hurt to look at. Traditional words, mostly, but Josiah had insisted on adding his own. "I promise to love you through summer heat and winter storms, to protect your children as my own, to build a home where laughter is louder than silence and hope is stronger than fear. I promise to never stop fighting for you, Hannah Dawson, for as long as I have breath in my body." Hannah's response came through tears. "I promise to fill your house with noise and chaos and more love than these walls have ever held. To teach your heart to hope again. To stand beside you against whatever comes. I promise to be your partner, your friend, your family, for as long as I have breath in my body." The preacher pronounced them married, and Josiah kissed his wife, while their children cheered and the crowd applauded, and somewhere in the distance, a meadowlark sang. The celebration lasted until sunset. There was food and music and dancing. the first real joy the ranch had seen in over a decade. The children ran wild with the offspring of neighboring families, their laughter ringing across the property like bells. Catherine watched from the porch, a soft smile on her face. "You did it," she said to Hannah during a quiet moment. "You found your happy ending." "We're not done yet. Marsden is still out there." "I know, but today isn't about Marsden. Today is about love winning, about hope surviving, about proving that men like him don't get to define our stories." Hannah squeezed her hand. "What about your story, Catherine? What happens next for you?" "I've been thinking about that." Catherine's expression grew thoughtful. "I want to help other women, women like us, who've been trapped and broken by men who thought they could own us. I want to create a place where they can come to heal, to rebuild, to find the strength to fight back. A shelter. Of a sort. More like a home. A safe place where no one judges you for what was done to you. Where you're believed from the first moment you walk through the door." "That's beautiful, Catherine." "I couldn't have imagined it without you. Without seeing what's possible when people refuse to give up on each other." Hannah looked out at the celebration, at Josiah swinging Lily around in circles while she shrieked with delight, at Ezra teaching Samuel to dance, at Miriam carefully holding baby Ruth while Mrs. Holstead cooed over them both. "Stay," she said. "Build it here. There's room on this ranch for 100 dreams." "You mean it?" "I've never meant anything more. This place was silent for 10 years. Now it's finally coming to life. Let's fill it with so much hope that it spills over and spreads across the whole territory." Catherine's eyes filled with tears. "I'd like that. I'd like that very much." 3 weeks after the wedding, Victor Marsden came back. It was the middle of the night when Tom's shout woke the household. Josiah was out of bed with his rifle in hand before Hannah could fully process what was happening. "Stay here," he said. "Keep the children in this room." "Josiah?" "I'll be back, I promise." He was out the door before she could argue. Marsden stood in the yard with a gun in his hand and madness in his eyes. He looked nothing like the polished businessman who'd ridden onto the property weeks ago. His clothes were torn and dirty, his face unshaven, his eyes wild. "Crane!" he screamed. "Come out and face me!" Josiah stepped onto the porch, rifle raised. Tom and Gus flanked him, their weapons ready. "It's over, Marsden. Coleman's got warrants out for your arrest in 3 territories. Every lawman between here and California is looking for you. Turn yourself in before this gets any worse." "Worse," Marsden laughed, a jagged, broken sound. "How could it possibly get worse? You've taken everything from me. My business, my reputation, my future. Everything I spent 20 years building, gone, because one worthless widow couldn't keep her mouth shut. She's not worthless, and she's not a widow anymore." Marsden's face contorted. "You married her. You actually married that lying, thieving—" "Careful." Josiah's voice went cold. "That's my wife you're talking about." "Your wife." Marsden spat the words like poison. "She's nothing. Less than nothing. And when I'm done here, when I've burned this ranch to the ground and put a bullet in everyone who helped her, she'll remember what it costs to defy me." "You're not going to do any of that." "No?" Marsden raised his gun. "Who's going to stop me?" "I am." The voice came from behind Josiah. Hannah stepped onto the porch, and Josiah's heart stopped. "Hannah, get back inside." "No." She walked forward until she was standing beside him. "This ends tonight, one way or another." Marsden stared at her. You did this, all of this." "I survived you. That's all I did. Everything else, the investigation, the warrants, your ruined reputation, that's all consequences. That's what happens when you spend 20 years destroying women who have no power, and one of them finally finds the courage to fight back. Courage, he sneered. You call it courage? I call it stupidity. I call it a failure to understand your place in the world. My place in the world is right here, with my husband, with my children, with a family that loves me and friends who would die to protect me. Hannah's voice didn't waver. Where's your family, Victor? Where are your friends? Where's anyone who gives a damn whether you live or die? Marsden's hand shook. The gun wavered. You're alone, Hannah continued. You've always been alone. All that money, all that power, and at the end of the day, there's no one. Just you and your hatred and the darkness you've built your whole life around. Shut up. The women you destroyed, Catherine, Martha, Sarah, all the others, they're going to testify against you. Every single one of them. The case is already being built. Even if you kill me tonight, it won't change anything. You're finished, Victor. You've been finished since the moment I walked away from your boarding house. I said shut up. He raised the gun, and Josiah moved without thinking. He threw himself in front of Hannah just as the shot rang out. Pain exploded through his shoulder. He hit the ground hard, hearing Hannah scream his name. Then more gunshots, Tom and Gus returning fire. A cry of pain from somewhere near where Marsden had been standing. Running footsteps, shouting. Josiah! Josiah! Hannah was kneeling over him, her hands pressed against his shoulder, blood seeping between her fingers. I'm okay, he managed. It's just my shoulder. Just your shoulder? You're bleeding everywhere. I've had worse, he tried to smile. Is Marsden? Tom got him. He's down. Josiah closed his eyes, relief washing through him. Good. That's good. Don't you dare close your eyes on me, Josiah Crane. Don't you dare. I'm not going anywhere. I promised, remember? Then prove it. Stay awake. Stay with me. He opened his eyes and looked up at her face, at the tears streaming down her cheeks, at the fierce determination in her eyes, at the love so strong it was almost painful to see. I love you, he said. I love you too. Now stop talking and let me stop this bleeding. Marsden lived, though he probably wished he hadn't. Tom's bullet had taken him in the leg, and by the time Sheriff Coleman arrived the next morning, he was in no condition to resist arrest. They took him away in chains, and Hannah watched from the porch with her children clustered around her. Ezra stood at her side, his young face set in grim satisfaction. He'll never hurt anyone again, the boy said. No, he won't. Is Mr. Josiah, is Papa going to be okay? The word hit Hannah like a physical blow. Papa. It was the first time any of the children had called Josiah that. He's going to be fine. The doctor says the bullet went clean through. A few weeks of rest and he'll be good as new. Can I see him? Of course. Ezra went inside, and Hannah heard his small voice a moment later. Papa, are you awake? Then Josiah's response, rough with pain but warm with love. I'm awake, son. Come here. Hannah closed her eyes and let the tears fall. Good tears this time. Healing tears. It was over. Finally, completely, irrevocably over. Victor Marsden's trial took place in October. Hannah testified. So did Catherine. So did 3 other women they'd tracked down over the summer. Survivors who'd spent years believing they were alone, that no one would believe them, that speaking up would only bring more pain. Edith Pruitt's documentation proved invaluable. So did Dr. Whitmore's medical notes. So did the testimony of Cornelius Wade, who'd agreed to turn state's evidence in exchange for a reduced sentence. The trial lasted 2 weeks. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty on all counts: fraud, extortion, assault, conspiracy, forcible commitment. The judge sentenced him to 25 years in the territorial prison, a sentence he was unlikely to survive. When the verdict was announced, Hannah looked across the courtroom at the man who had haunted her nightmares for so long. He was smaller than she remembered, broken, diminished. He met her eyes, and for just a moment, she saw something that might have been regret. Or maybe just hatred. It didn't matter anymore.
"It's over," she said to Catherine as they left the courthouse. "It's finally over. For us. But there are other women out there. Other monsters. Other battles to fight." "I know. And we'll fight them. Together," Catherine smiled. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The shelter opened the following spring. They called it Hope House, and it occupied a newly built addition to the ranch. 6 bedrooms, a large kitchen, a common room where women could gather and share their stories and begin to heal. Catherine ran it with fierce efficiency and bottomless compassion. Hannah helped when she could, between caring for her own children and managing the expanded household that the ranch had become. Word spread, as it always does. Women came from across the territory, some with children, some alone, all of them carrying burdens they've been told they had to bear in silence. They stayed for weeks or months, regaining their strength, learning that they weren't broken or crazy or worthless. They learned that they were survivors. By summer, Hope House had helped a dozen women start new lives. By fall, that number had doubled. By winter, they were planning a second location in the neighboring county. "We're going to need more space," Catherine said one evening, reviewing the latest applications by lamplight. "More rooms, more staff, more everything." "Then we'll build it," Josiah said. He'd recovered fully from his gunshot wound, though Hannah sometimes caught him rubbing his shoulder when he thought no one was looking. "This land's been empty too long. Time it served a purpose." "You've already given so much." "I've received more." He looked at Hannah, at the children gathered around the fire, at the life that had filled every corner of his once silent house. "Everything I have, everything I am, it's because a desperate woman collapsed on my doorstep and showed me what real courage looks like." "You saved her life." "She saved mine." Hannah looked up and caught his eye, and in that glance was everything: the fear they'd faced, the battles they'd won, the love that had grown from impossible beginnings into something unshakable. A year after the wedding, on a cool September evening, the whole family gathered on the porch to watch the sunset. Ezra sat on the steps, whittling a horse from a piece of pine. At 8, he'd grown 3 inches and lost some of the fierce wariness that had defined him when they'd first arrived. He still watched over his siblings, but now it was the protective instinct of an older brother, rather than the desperate vigilance of a boy trying to be a man. Miriam was reading aloud to Samuel and Lily from a book of fairy tales Mrs. Holstead had given her. At 6, she'd learned to read faster than any child the school teacher had ever seen. She wanted to be a teacher herself someday, she'd announced, or maybe a writer, or maybe both. Samuel, at 5, had developed a passion for the horses that bordered on obsession. He spent every spare moment in the barn, helping Gus with the grooming and feeding, learning the names and personalities of every animal on the ranch. Josiah had promised him a pony of his own when he turned 6. The boy had been counting down the days ever since. Lily had transformed from a silent, traumatized 3-year-old into a chattering 4-year-old who never stopped asking questions. Why is the sky blue? Why do horses eat grass? Why does Papa's coffee smell so bad? Her favorite word was why, and she used it approximately 400 times a day. Baby Ruth was walking now, toddling around on unsteady legs
with the determination of someone who refused to accept that falling down was an option. She'd said her first word last month, not mama or papa, but kitty, inspired by the barn cats she was obsessed with. And Catherine sat in the rocking chair that had once belonged to Martha, a cup of tea cooling in her hands, watching the family she'd become part of with quiet contentment. "What are you thinking about?" Hannah asked, settling into the chair beside her. "How different everything is. A year ago, I was in an asylum, convinced I'd die there. Now I'm here, surrounded by people who love me, doing work that matters." Catherine shook her head. "I never imagined this was possible." "Neither did I. A year ago, I was walking through the desert with 4 starving children, praying for a miracle." Hannah reached over and took Catherine's hand. "I think we both found one." "Mama!" Lily's voice cut through the moment. "Miriam won't let me see the pictures." "Miriam, share with your sister." "But she always smudges the pages." "Then teach her to be more careful." Normal chaos. Beautiful chaos. The kind of chaos that filled a house with life and love and the endless, exhausting, wonderful noise of a family. Josiah emerged from the house with Ruth on his hip and a smile on his face. "Mail came," he said. "Letter for you, Hannah." She took it, frowning at the unfamiliar handwriting. When she opened it, her breath caught. "What is it?" Josiah asked. "It's from a woman in California. She read about the trial in the newspaper. She says—" Hannah's voice broke. "She says Marsden did the same thing to her 10 years ago. She says she's been carrying the shame alone all this time, thinking she was the only one. She says knowing other women survived, knowing we fought back, has given her the courage to finally tell her story." Catherine leaned forward. "Is she asking for help?" "She's asking if she can come here, to Hope House, to heal." "Then she's welcome. They're all welcome." Hannah looked at the letter, at the shaky handwriting of a woman who'd found hope after a decade of despair. This was why they'd fought. This was why they'd risked everything. Not just for themselves, but for every woman who came after them. Every survivor who needed to know she wasn't alone. "Write her back," Josiah said quietly. "Tell her there's a place for her here. Tell her she's not alone anymore." "I will." Hannah folded the letter carefully. "I'll write her tonight." The sun sank below the mountains, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink and gold. The children's voices rose and fell in familiar arguments and laughter. The ranch hands headed toward the bunkhouse, their day's work done. The horses settled in the corral, peaceful in the gathering twilight, and Hannah sat surrounded by her family, the husband who'd saved her life, the children she'd walked through fire to protect, the friend who'd found her voice again, the home they'd built from nothing but love and stubborn hope. "Mama?" Ezra's voice was quiet, thoughtful. "Are you happy?" Hannah looked at her oldest son, at the boy who'd carried so much for so long, who'd fought and feared and never stopped protecting the people he loved. "Yes, baby, I'm happy." "Good." He went back to his whittling, but she saw the small smile on his face. "Me too." That night, after the children were asleep and Catherine had retired to her room and the house was quiet, Hannah and Josiah lay together in the darkness. "Thank you," she whispered. "For what?" "For stopping that day, for bringing us here, for fighting for us when you had every reason to look away." "I couldn't look away." He pulled her closer. "The moment I saw you on that road, something in me recognized something in you. 2 broken people who'd forgotten how to hope. I couldn't ride past that. It would have been like riding past myself. You saved us." "We saved each other." He kissed her forehead. "That's what love does. It doesn't keep score. It doesn't calculate costs and benefits. It just shows up, day after day, and refuses to give up." "Is that your philosophy on marriage?" "It's my philosophy on everything." Learned it from a woman who walked through the desert with 4 children because she refused to let a monster win. Hannah smiled into the darkness. She sounds stubborn. She's the most stubborn person I've ever met. It's one of the things I love about her. Only one of the things? I've got a list. It's pretty long. Want me to recite it? Maybe in the morning. I'm too tired to appreciate it properly right now. Then sleep. I'll be here when you wake up. Promise? Always. She closed her eyes, and for the first time and longer than she could remember, sleep came easy. No nightmares, no fear, just the steady rhythm of her husband's heartbeat and the knowledge that she was exactly where she belonged. The summer that had nearly killed her had become the summer that saved her. The road that had seemed like an ending had been a beginning. The stranger who'd stopped to help had become the love of her life. 10 years of silence had been broken by the sound of children's laughter. A house built for a family had finally become one. And a woman who'd been running for so long had finally found a place to stand. Hannah Dawson Crane had walked through fire and come out the other side. She'd faced monsters and defeated them. She'd built something beautiful from the ashes of everything she'd lost. And now, lying in the arms of the man who'd seen her at her worst and loved her anyway, she knew one thing with absolute certainty. This was home. This was family. This was forever. And it was more than enough. It was everything.